Inside this faux alligator skin briefcase is my collection of vintage cassette tapes. And the one thing these all have in common is that they do not use the typical Philips style clamshell case that we all know and love, with the clear front and it opens like that, and you put the cassette in like that. And everybody who's used the cassette in the past 40 years or so is very familiar with this. These are different. Most of them have what is known as a snap case, because it snaps open and closed like that. And it's a completely solid plastic case with a paper label stuck on it. And a few others have what is called a slide case, like this Bee Gees cassette. And it just slides in from the side like that. It's a rather unusual bright pink cassette, and that just slides in like that. So these are all not your typical cassettes, and these are all from around 1966 to the early to mid 1970s. I think the newest one here is this one from 1975, which was the tail end of this kind of case design. And we're listening to one of these right now, this 101 Strings cassette from the late 1960s. I already did a video talking all about the history of pre-recorded cassette tapes and giving more audio samples of what some of these sound like even after 50 years. But today I want to focus on this one, which had an unfortunate incident when I was trying to play it. If you look inside there, not only is that foam pad completely disintegrating, because this was before they standardized on that little felt pad on a spring. On some of these, they just stuck a piece of foam in there, like an 8-track. And not only that, you don't see any tape in it, because it snapped off right at the end when I was rewinding it. So, unfortunately, this one is not screwed, so we'll need to crack it open and try to fix it. And this one is from 1972, so we're going to be fixing, hopefully, a 50-year-old cassette. I actually already had the same thing happen to this cassette, which is from around 1968. It's another snap case. And this one, what happened to it is that it got very sticky. It would hardly move at all when I put it in any cassette player. It would often just kick off the auto stop because it had too much tension required to move the tape. And the tape itself was fine. The problem was that the original clear plastic leaders, I think they were originally a pink color, had gotten sticky with age. So what I did with this one, I was able to crack it open. Unfortunately, I broke off a little piece of it there in the process, but otherwise it survived. And I transplanted in a new leader tape on each end from a donor cassette. So that's the new yellow leader tape. There's where I spliced it on to the original magnetic tape that was in this from 1968. And if you look closely, you can also see where I put in a conventional spring style pressure pad. You push on it and it springs a little bit on top of the remnants of the original foam pad that was glued down. And it just so happens that the cassette shell had the little slots for one of these spring pads. So what I think happened with these cassettes is that they were originally designed for this spring pad, and then at some point they started to cheapen out on them in the late 60s, early 70s by putting in these foam pads. I think this was when they were trying to compete with play tapes, which were that briefly popular tape format aimed at kids and teenagers in the late 60s, and those are probably a lot cheaper than cassettes. So what they tried to do was make cassettes cheaper to compete with them, and unfortunately they really cheapened out on the materials in these by using that foam pad which disintegrates. This is a GRT tape, and this one that just broke on me, the Flip Wilson cassette from 1972, doesn't say GRT on it, but otherwise it's identical. The same color scheme, the same shell, the same stamp on it, and that same crappy foam pad. And this probably what happened to this, the same thing, the leader got sticky, so we'll need to crack it open, splice in new leaders, scrape off what's left of this foam pad, transplant in a new spring pad, and then hopefully we'll be able to get this one playing again. And to crack it open, I have this toolkit with tools designed to open smartphones and tablets. Unfortunately, this is a rather cheap set, and one of them already broke on me. That's why there's a missing tool here, but otherwise we still have some that we could possibly use to crack open the cassette. And I also have this donor cassette that I can use to put in a new spring pad and to take the leader tape from. This is some cheap no-name 10-minute cassette, and it's a screwed shell, so if I need to, I could just transplant this entire tape into this shell. And you can kind of see this label is already starting to peel off, so maybe I can just steam off the entire label and stick it on this one. But first I'll try to save this shell since it's original. And to get started at trying to crack this one open, I didn't even need any tools. I just took a tip I learned from a video from Dr. DCC about how to crack open a DCC.
The trick come up how to open this cassette is basically to do that in this way.
You just twist on it very hard, and this one I could hear cracking, and I think it started to crack at the back here. You can see, yeah, so I didn't even need any tools to get this one started. I just needed to put some elbow muscle into it, or whatever that phrase is. Elbow grease, that's what I was talking about. You can see I'm now trying to crack open the rest of it, and this is going to be the hardest part because that's where the business end of it is. But looks like we're getting somewhere. There we go, almost there. Okay, we're open, and it's already coming apart. So let me try to spool that back together. So there's our 50-year-old spool of tape, which I put some painter's tape on to keep it from unspooling on me. And it actually snapped the tape itself, not the leader. But this leader tape needs to go, because I had a bad experience with that Lawrence Welk tape, of the leader getting sticky, and I don't want that to happen to this one. So I'm just going to open up this donor cassette and take the new leader out of it and splice it on to this. Here's another sign of cheapness of this cassette design. In addition to just having this foam pad glued to the metal shield there, it doesn't even use rollers. The tape just runs across these fixed plastic posts, and these slip sheets are coated with graphite, which of course wears away over time. So I'm also going to be transplanting in new slip sheets. Here is our donor cassette. I unscrewed it, and here's the new slip sheets, which I'll transplant. And it has one of those spring pads, and I'm going to be cutting off the tape on this because I don't need it. I just want this leader tape, and I'm going to take this little spring thing and put that in, and hopefully we'll have all the parts we need to fix that 50-year-old cassette. And this is where it really helps to have a cassette splicing kit. You get the splicing block, new splicing tape to attach the tape back together if you need to splice it in the middle, or to attach it to the leader at the end, and a razor blade. You can get these online. There's the new donor leader tape in the splicing block. So I'll just carefully cut that. And we don't want to throw this entire thing away because we'll need the leader tape at the other end of this. But for now, we can do one end of our splice of the new leader tape. There's the broken end of the 50-year-old tape in the splicing block, so I'll just carefully cut off the excess and take that away. And I'll bring in our new donor leader and put that in the splicing block, being careful not to get it twisted. And I'll do the same thing. I'll cut it at an angle. Now I cut off a little piece of that splicing tape, and I'll just carefully lay it down on top of that splice. Now we can take this out of the splicing block, and there's the new leader transplanted onto the end of that 50-year-old tape. For now, what I'll do, since we'll still need to do the same thing at the other end of it, is I'll transplant it into this new donor shell, just so we can temporarily put this back together, so I can fast forward it all the way to the other end and do the same thing. There's that 50-year-old tape spliced onto the new leader, and just temporarily we're going to put it back in this donor shell. I only put back in one screw because that's all we need for now to hold it together, to fast forward it with this hand winder to the other end of the tape. And there we can see where it is still attached to that original sticky blue leader tape, which we'll also need to splice out and splice into new donor leader tape. So I won't show that on camera, it'll just be the same process as I showed before. I also need to get to the other end of this donor tape, and since I don't need to save it, I can have some fun with it. Whee! Now we have cassette salad here. And there's our leader tape at the other end. It pains me a little bit to see that, but at least it's going to good purpose of fixing this 50-year-old cassette. There's the new leader spliced onto the other end of the tape. I decided I'm going to try to save the original shell because I tested it and it still pretty much snaps back together. I did break off 2 of the plastic pegs, but the other 2 are still left, and it still has these non-rollers. They actually fit together to hold it together, but I'm transplanting in new slip sheets, that new spring pad, which fits into the slots that was originally designed to have one, even though this originally had one of those crappy foam pads instead. The only thing is I forgot which side is which, so I'm just going to temporarily put this back together, and if the wrong side is playing on what is supposed to be the A side, I'll just have to open it up again and flip it over. That's the new leader tape, the new spring pad. Now I just have to play this and make sure the right side is playing. I'm just going to be using this cheap Emerson boombox, and hopefully we'll be hearing the correct side, which starts with great quotations. Otherwise, if we hear the great motorbike and tennis shoe race, then we'll know we got the sides backwards. And this one, it goes in upside down, so it goes in like that, and I'll hit play. Alright, that sounds like that motorbike race. So we got our sides backwards. So I'll need to open it up and flip it around, but otherwise it's playing. A repaired 50-year-old cassette. I'll just fast forward it a little bit more.
Sharp motorbike. He said, but I bought my tennis shoes down because I wanted you to see my tennis shoes. And Charlie said, tennis shoes? I said, yeah. I said, my tennis shoes, I wanted you to see them. I said, I'm as proud of my tennis shoes as you are that motorbike. I said, in fact, I can will.
Other side.
Then he said, if the bird can't sing, I don't want him. I want a real singer. And I said, look, if I tell you the bird can sing, the bird can sing. I said, come here, I'll let you see my best singer. So there he is. The bird can really sing. He has arrangements to all of his tunes. When he starts to sing, those other birds shut up and listen. Because they know that this bird got talent.
That's how to do advanced surgery and repair of a cassette tape.
The greatest quotation made by a woman was made by a girl named Sarah Johnson. And it was made when I was coming in to do the show out at the Los Angeles airport. It was Sarah Johnson, whom I heard tell the airline's service representative there,
if you can fly this plane 600 miles an hour in the dark and find Los Angeles, you can find my bags.